Welcome back to ETV. Well, it seems there's two new movies that are hitting theaters this weekend, and according to Sean the Movie Guy, it seems like one of them is seriously going to kick. I'll let Sean just tell you about it.
At some point in our lives, we all wanted to be a superhero.
The South by Southwest Film Festival is known for screening films with a little attitude, so it's unsurprising that they chose as this year's opening night premiere a film that's so chock full of indie attitude and swagger that even its name is edgy. The movie is called Kick-Ass, and it's a lot of fun.
How come nobody's ever tried to be a superhero?
Dude, if anybody did it in real life, they'd be dead in like a day.
Basically, it's the story of a quiet high school kid, a full-on comic geek who decides to become a superhero, even though he has absolutely no special powers. He dons a cheesy costume and soon becomes an online sensation. Now, the film is very funny, but be warned that it's also quite dark and twisted. A huge hit with the college crowd at this year's South by Southwest Festival.
Bro, who's this? You know, I asked myself the same thing when my dad passed. I said, who is this man? No, who's in this coffin? Because that's not my father.
The week's other wide release is Death at a Funeral, in which a family gathers for their father's funeral, only to have all sorts of family secrets and scandals exposed.
What's wrong with Oscar?
I gave him one of your Valiums.
So here's the thing. What you thought was Valium is actually like a hallucinogenic.
Hello.
Based on a very entertaining British film, Death at a Funeral takes a farcical story and amps everything up a notch with an all-star American cast that includes Chris Rock, Martin Lawrence, Tracy Morgan, Luke Wilson, and more. It's not the most nuanced comedy ever, but how can you go wrong with a cast like that? And that's what's new in the movies this week. I'm Sean McBride, the Movie Guy, for ETV.
And Sean the Movie Guy joins us now to tell us about those two movies.
Yeah, pretty good stuff this week. Obviously, Kick-Ass was a wonderful film. Opening night at South by Southwest. Really, particularly if you're like a college kid.
Right.
You're really going to want to see this.
Or sort of a college kid at heart.
Yes, right.
Yeah, okay, I'm there, dude.
But very dark, very twisted. And then also Death at a Funeral, I think will do very well as well.
Very good. Now, as far as new DVDs that are coming out?
Honestly, not a great week for new DVDs. Pirate Radio is probably the biggest of the new releases on that list. Kind of a fun story of back in the 60s when it was illegal to broadcast rock and roll. Mm-hmm. Ships harbored, they docked outside offshore of Britain, and they would play this rock and roll. And it's the story of the British government trying to shut them down, but it's really the short story of all these strange and wonderful characters that are doing rock and roll broadcasting in the 1960s.
Anything to beat the FCC, although they don't have the FCC over there.
Yeah, exactly. The British government does. So, yeah, a lot of fun. And then we also mentioned, Gone with the Wind, for example, on Blu-ray. So.
Oh, very good. And then as far as movies at the Flicks?
At the Flicks, two new films opening very quickly here. We have A Prophet, which is the film that won the Palme d'Or. That's a French film, came out. And The Joneses, a story about a family that moves into a community, but I think there's sort of a viral marketing campaign, not a real family. So I haven't seen that one. But those are opening up at the Flicks. Hey, let's get over to the theater because there's a lot of stuff opening up in theater this week. I had the chance to see two plays this weekend. The first was Namaste Man over at Boise Contemporary Theater. Really interesting story about this guy who basically it's his life. He grew up sort of a military brat, born in Korea, and then he went to Zambia and Nepal. And the story is sort of his story, kind of a fun little one-man type of a show here. I also saw 12 Angry Men over at Boise Little Theater. That's the old classic based on the old Henry Fonda play, movie. So check that out. Also mentioning this week over at the Nampa Civic Center, we have Cabaret one night only on April 17th, 8 p.m. You can call 468-5555 if you want to get tickets to that. We have Panache opening up at the Stagecoach Theater. Stagecoach is call 342-2000 or go to stagecoachtheater.com. That's Theater R-E. We have Nonsense over at Knock 'em Dead. That's their final weekend if you want to see that. Nonsense is just a lot of fun. So plenty of stuff. Tis the season for theater to kick off.
I think they need to have like a theater card, like see all.
Super punch card. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. Well, a lot of variety in the theater there, so.
Plenty of stuff. So.
That sounds fabulous. All right, well, Sean, thanks for joining us. Bike Week. We're going to get you ready to jump on board on the Greenbelt with everything you'll need to know as ETV continues right after this.
Get ETV Entertainment Television 24 hours a day when you log on to eTVEverywhere.com.